Here's some news from the world over. Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring, Governor Ralph Northam, and Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, the state's three top Democrats, all faced questions about past behavior that may threaten their political careers. The controversies are serious, two involving racially offensive behavior, and the other an alleged sexual assault. Over the weekend, a racist photo from Northam's 1984 medical school yearbook was uncovered. On Wednesday, AG Mark Herring came forward to acknowledge that he, too, had worn blackface at a college party in the 80s. In the case of Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, a graphic statement was issued this week from his accuser, a female college professor in California. She says Fairfax sexually assaulted her in 2004. The overlapping crises have hit at the busiest time of year for Virginia's part-time legislature, which is facing a stalemate over the state budget and taxes. Should all three Democrats step down, Kirk Cox, the Republican Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates, is next in line for succession and could become governor. Mississippi is the latest state to introduce a law that could outlaw abortion for children with a detectable fetal heartbeat, except in the cases of a medical emergency. Mississippi state legislators criticized what they called New York's sickening celebration of legalized infanticide on the delivery table. Congress's failure to defund Planned Parenthood and pass major pro-life legislation has been met with a stream of bold legislation by states to protect the unborn. Here to unpack that and much more, I'm joined by the chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt SCHLAPP. Matt, thanks for being here.
Great to be here, Raymond.
Okay, I want to start with President Trump. He delivered his second State of the Union. In it, he spoke about his administration's accomplishments, obviously, and future plans. He also talked about unity and reached across the aisle to Democrats. Watch.
Together, we can break decades of political stalemate. We can bridge old divisions, heal old wounds, build new coalitions, forge new solutions, and unlock the extraordinary promise of America's future. The decision is ours to make.
He said it was America's agenda, not one party or the others. Did that play in the room? And then we'll talk about whether it played across
the room is a strange place, but he was genuflecting to this idea that the Democrats did take over the House of Representatives. Bill Clinton had that happen to him when Republicans took over Congress, and he said, look, I know I have to change things. The era of big government is over. And President Trump came to the floor and talked about some very common sense things people like Nancy Pelosi have been very strong on, taking on China, making sure we have reciprocal trade agreements, getting the economy growing. How about the lowest African-American unemployment or Hispanic unemployment or the big economic gains of women? So he went there. I think it worked well around the country. Not so sure in the room.
Yeah, no, I think he unified the country in some ways. And we'll talk about how he did that. I mean, watching it, he revealed certain elements of the Democratic agenda that I'm not sure Americans had fully processed. And the drama of having the ladies in white, you could see exactly who was who from the wide shot. That also, I think, backfired on some of those ladies. But we'll talk about that in a moment. On Wednesday, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had this to say about the president's speech.
Last night, President Trump had the opportunity to bring our parties together and offer the Congress and the country a new vision for the next 2 years of divided government. President Trump squandered the opportunity with a forgettable and oftentimes incoherent speech.
Was that your takeaway? Was this an incoherent speech? Even Rick Santorum said it was one of the worst delivered speeches he believes Donald Trump ever gave.
This is the problem when they say Trump delusion syndrome. The problem is he kind of scrambles the brains of people's objectivity. If you actually just looked at him giving the speech, he delivered that speech better than he normally delivers a teleprompter speech. He had practiced it, but more than anything else, he was very comfortable with the words because he helped create the words. Therefore, I thought the speech had a real genuine quality to it. I actually think he was calling America up to the idea that it's very alarming that people are getting comfortable with America being socialist.
Yeah.
That was the call to arms.
No, I agree with you. I mean, just as an objective, you know, and look, there have been moments where Donald Trump has given some not so great speeches, or they were off the cuff and kind of wandering. This was not that.
Not at all.
And I think when you see CBS polls, 76% of Americans who watched thought they approved of the speech. 72% supported his ideas on immigration, which was kind of shocking.
So don't listen to the people who say, well, that's because it was a skewed Republican audience, because even the president tweeted out that, you know, over 80% of Republicans and conservatives liked the speech, 30%, right, of Democrats liked what they heard, and a majority of independents.
Yeah.
That's a nice sweet spot for a president in all this churn of political change.
Yeah. There was a moment where he demanded that Congress pass a late-term abortion ban. Obviously, a backhand to that governor in Virginia who's embroiled in all his controversies, as well as Andrew Cuomo in New York. Here's a moment. Watch.
There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb. Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life. And let us reaffirm a fundamental truth. All children, born and unborn, are made in the holy image of God.
You saw the entire Democratic caucus sitting on their hands here. It was a stark moment. What did that reveal, and what is the political ramification?
First thing is people say, well, abortion is controversial. Some people might believe that. The idea of late-term abortion, partial birth abortion, which was much about the second trimester, killing a child after it's born, these are not controversial things in America, thank God. These are things that 80% plus in polls show that the American people want to make sure this never happens. And this is what I love about Donald Trump. It's the common sense. How could anybody look at those facts and think that that makes sense? He actually is puzzled by the fact that actually politicians would actually try to advocate this. And I think it makes him angry because even he, like immediately, with all of the different positions he's taken over the years on different political stands, he can see that like America's really at a crossroads. And this is one of the examples of why we have to take the right turn.
You know, he is clearly, and I cannot remember ever seeing a president, even the one you worked for, George W. Bush, never went at a State of the Union address and spoke with that candor and at that length about this pro-life cause. Are you surprised that more people who have advocated for life, even pro-life advocates, they really don't give him any credit? They don't echo. Usually people will take up the mantra and echo it around this town. You don't see that.
Well, first of all, don't worry about this town. But I think when you punch out of this town, I think people of faith, by the way, people of science who might even be atheist or agnostic, people who understand about life in the womb, I think it was startling to have a president of the United States use those terms. It was a flashback to what he said in that debate against Hillary Clinton, which I believe still, that was probably the thing that converted more people that were dubious about Donald Trump on an issue like life. It converted him because he used the words, connecting to people with real words, common sense words that drive it home. And he just did it again in the State of the Union. By the way, it's controversial. Do you think he had some aides that say, pull this out? I bet he did. And he said, no, I'm keeping it in.
Yeah, no, it was a stark moment, and I agree with you. I think this will resonate powerfully, particularly in the wake of what we saw in New York from Cuomo and in Virginia, which I think shocked even those who are pro-choice. They were shocked by the extent of this, where you're saying, even as a child is delivered or after delivery, you can still kill them.
That's right. And, you know, these words, pro-choice, give women the choice over their bodies, don't, you know, hands off my body, they're like anesthetizing. It's just people just regurgitate them and repeat them. These examples wake people up to the hard, cold reality that abortion stops a beating heart.
Yeah. I want to play this for you. President Trump also touted the economic boom in the country over the last 2 years. He had this to say about unemployment. Watch.
Unemployment has reached the lowest rate in over half a century. African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American unemployment have all reached their lowest levels ever recorded. Unemployment for Americans with disabilities has also reached an all-time low. More people are working now than at any time in the history of our country. 157 million people at work.
Is this getting lost in the rest of the drama we're seeing between the investigations and talk of a new Green Deal? Are we losing what people normally vote over, which is the economic pocketbook issues? Is that getting lost in the shuffle here politically?
I think for Donald Trump, there's a real threat that it does get lost. But for the American people who are actually seeing the benefits in their individual lives, they know very well that the socialist policies under Barack Obama is exacerbated all the poverty statistics, hurt vulnerable people, made it hard for people coming out of college to get jobs. They know in their individual lives. That's why it's important for the president to keep reminding him, it's not just about tax cuts. It's about the whole idea of the freedom of the individual to engage in commerce and getting the government out of the way when it doesn't have a role.
I want to play this Stacey Abrams, who is she was actually the failed gubernatorial candidate in Georgia, who the Democrats put forward to respond to the president. Here are her thoughts on employment.
The Republican tax bill rigged the system against working people. Rather than bringing back jobs, plants are closing, layoffs are looming, and wages struggle to keep pace with the actual cost of living.
Did this rebuttal work? Some of our colleagues here in town, Chris Wallace, for instance, said, oh, she's more in touch with the working people than Donald Trump.
I saw him say that. Look, Stacey Abrams is 0 for 2. She lost that gubernatorial race, and I think she lost this rebuttal. They're hard to give, but the reason she lost is that, once again, she's just using the same old words that liberals always use to try to say that the American experiment is a flawed experiment. And I think the thing that really was discordant to people is they know that the economy is stronger. We have more openings for jobs than we have people to fill them. We haven't seen an economy growing like this since the early Reagan years. So I think, unfortunately, fell a little flat.
Yeah, no, some people said, oh, she's got real presence. I found it very predictable. It's like someone hitting the same key over and over again. She's winning, she's confident, but the message was like, as you said, it was almost from another time.
That's right.
And I think there are vulnerabilities here for Donald Trump, but I don't think she exploited any of them.
There are, let me just tell you, the country is split. The country has been split since 2006. We've gone back and forth. The people are uncomfortable with each of the two major parties. There's great opportunities for politicians to stand up and realize that.
Real maverick.
Is she one of those? Not when you regurgitate the same old slogans from the previous 8 years.
Yeah. Before I get off of this, and I want to move to Northam, the governor of Virginia, and there's some insight I need from you on that. Do you think when the president established that moment at the State of the Union about socialism, saying we will never be a socialist country, we're not going to do that, did he put a stake in the heart of the new green agenda, the 80 to 90% tax rate for upper earners? Is that enough?
No, he didn't put a stake in the heart. I wish I could just take a couple of words. But he planted a flag. And he said, we have to remember what makes America unique. You cannot believe in collectivism, in Marxism, in communism, and believe in Americanism.
Is this going to be the debate of 2020? Is this setting the table for the 2020 presidential?
It is, but I'm afraid, Raymond, it might be the theme of the rest of our lives, because there are Gallup polls show that a majority of Democrats are saying they're comfortable with being the Socialist Party. A generation ago, we fought the socialists. We fought the fascists.
Well, and young people are being persuaded as well because they've never seen it.
It's scary.
It's out of their life experience.
It's scary. And leave it to Donald Trump. Once again, he's not philosophically oriented, but he gets this. He knows that this runs counter to what makes America great.
Let's talk about Virginia Governor Northam, obviously caught up in this blackface scandal. But the thing that I think really first drew national attention to him were those infanticide comments where he said, let me tell you, during that radio interview, we're going to play it. This is during a radio interview. He talked about he could tell you exactly what happens at these moments when a woman makes this terrible choice. Watch.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
You had an interesting insight on what you heard there. That perhaps
when I listened to that, I was shocked. I think everyone was shocked. Like, is he really talking about killing a child? I think killing an unborn child is the same. But for most people, this is just like unbelievable. How would you actually take a
viable child? It's alive.
Yeah, it's alive. It's out of the womb. And what I realized is that this man is a pediatrician. Obviously, he has been involved in these types of decisions, perhaps with his patients. And I worried that no one's asked him the question, how do you know so well that the child is kept comfortable? How do you know so well what is done in these circumstances? Mm-hmm. Because to do this is a barbarism that we should not accept. It's illegal. And someone ought to ask him the question.
Most people missed that in New York, that abortion expansion bill that Andrew Cuomo signed, the governor, it removed abortion and infanticide from the criminal code and moved it into the health care law in New York. That is a seismic change that has not gotten enough reportage. And frankly, I was shocked when I read that. But what that means is, as Northam is indicating, that physicians, the mother, can make the decision pre or post-birth.
That's right.
About the fate of that child. That really requires, I think, scrutiny.
And this is a constitutional right, our First Amendment right. The whole idea is a statute can't impact it. It's in the Bill of Rights. And what they're essentially doing is watering down our First Amendment right to life. And finally, they say, well, these are only in the most rare of circumstances. As you know, that New York bill and what Northam is talking about, the health exception,
emotional
means
well-being.
Any reason at all is just fine in order to kill that child at the very end of pregnancy and maybe after pregnancy.
We'll leave it there. Matt SCHLAPP, thank you for being here.
Raymond.
Follow Matt's work at the American Conservative Union at conservative.org, and their big CPAC conference is coming up in the next few weeks.